Hello, everybody. Welcome to the No BS Zone. I'm Bernie Goldberg, and I'm here with John Daly in Colorado. Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm good. How about you, Bernie?
I'm not good. I'm not good. I'm in a bad mood. I'm disgusted, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And you could help explain to our viewers why I'm in a bad mood. I want to start out talking about Terry Moran, the ABC News correspondent, who was former ABC News correspondent who was just fired. Took to social media, as many of you know, and said that Donald Trump and Stephen Miller, one of Donald Trump's top advisors, were world class haters. You can't do that if you're a hard news reporter. You can't betray how you feel about people you cover. So ABC News said, no, you're gone. I know about that. I don't know that I would have fired him. I would have suspended him, but I'm not losing any sleep that he lost his job. But 10 minutes after he got fired, he went to Substack, the same place that we publish our material. And what happened is that he got a gazillion followers instantly. And he got a gazillion followers, as John Daly texted me the other day, because, because we're tribal, because he said Donald Trump was a world class hater, and that's what people wanted to hear. We give you nuanced commentary. We give you commentary that say Donald Trump is bad when we think he's bad, and we say Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were bad when we think they were. Well, that doesn't work. What works is tribalism, and I'm so sick of it. What works is taking a position, a MAGA position or an anti-MAGA position exclusively, no nuance, no on the one hand this, on the other hand that. And we're losing viewers every single day. We're losing subscribers every single day because either I said something bad about Donald Trump that they didn't want to hear, or I wasn't nasty enough about Donald Trump. I'm sick of it. I'm really sick of it. John, pick it up from here because I want to go home right now.
Well, the good thing is I think you are home, Bernie, so that's good. But the no, like you said, Terry Moran, I largely agree with you regarding his trick, how ABC News, chose to handle that situation, and that what he did was inappropriate. He was a hard news guy. I don't have much to add to that. But you're right. And this is sort of something we've seen a number of times now. Within a few days of being let go by this major media organization, Terry Moran, I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong. He started a Substack, got right away 90,000 subscribers, with thousands of them being paying subscribers. And I don't think, Bernie, I'm pretty sure, as you suggested, and as we talked about this before, it wasn't because these people that subscribe to what Terry Moran has to say, they're not blown away by his journalistic integrity. It's because they view him now as this resistance figure, possibly even a martyr in some sense. Um, but either way, a member of the leftist anti-Trump tribe, and that's what sells. And it's funny because
But that,
every now and then.
but that's the point, John, and that's what has me so upset. That's what sells. You're absolutely right. And is there any place for our kind of commentary where we're principled conservatives and we criticize the right when we don't think they're principled conservatives. But that's not what sells. That's not what gets people to follow us. And I'm really tired of it. I'm tired of waking up every day, checking our subscriber list and seeing it. We lose a couple every single day. And Terry Moran, I don't blame Terry Moran for this. I
Right.
blame the whole mental outlook about what sells and what people want in their journalism and in their commentary. I'm just sick of it.
No, I mean, and then so that it's funny because I've written a lot about how this metamorphosis, and it's on both sides. But for now, let's talk about our situation. We're media conservatives, When the Trump era started back in 2015, 2016, we saw this exodus of ideology from all these media conservatives who for years were preaching, about small government, about, the importance of character. Nearly all, I would say 95% of them, maybe not between 90 95% of them, basically surrendered on that front, and they went straight into just tribal pandering. And pandering at that point was to the MAGA crowd. And so, yeah, I mean that's a successful revenue model. We saw Fox News; they've done well with it. We've seen Newsmax emerge. We've seen all these other places. That's what people want. They want you to pander to them. And there are beacons of hope out there. It's not just you and I. We see people, the Dispatch, I think, has done very well with this. I say very well. They still pale in comparison to the tribal outlets, but there are people out there who have this appetite for principles, for conservative principles, for people who play it straight. But it's not nearly what the other half of that equation is.
My wife made an interesting point. She's a former journalist. And she made an interesting point. She said, what we're doing is what most Americans want. And I said, but it's not what people who go looking for commentary want. It's two different Americas. One is, we're tired of the extremes on both sides. We're tired of the knee-jerk responses. We want honest journalism, no non-biased, honest. But that's not what the people in the social commentary world want. That's not what the people who come to the internet and look for commentary want. And I'm just tired of waking up every day and looking at our list of followers and finding it's lower and lower. We can't last forever with the numbers going south. One day we're gonna come on with the No BS Zone and say this is our last No BS Zone. We thank everybody who was loyal to us. We appreciate it more than you know. But we're done. We're freaking done, because that's not what sells. And I don't mean sells in a money sense. I mean
Right.
sells in a following sense, a follower sense, of people wanting to hear and read what we have to say sense. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, it's very frustrating because and I think what your wife says is somewhat right. I think it's definitely what most people say they want, but you're right. Too, it's people that are engaged enough in politics to go out there online and be checking in and want to hear what people have to say. Most of those folks are tribal, and it's unfortunately where we're at, but it explains so much of what's happened to the political media in the last 10 years or so. People have identified that if they stick to their principles, tell the truth, play things straight, hold both sides to the same standards, audiences aren't going to like that. And it's interesting because I think it's even
Does
more
that
of an issue.
does that not depress you, John?
Oh, absolutely. See, I'm not as worried. I mean, we're talking about our subscriptions. I'm more worried just in the broader picture of what Americans latch onto.
Yes,
They latch onto.
exactly.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm not as feeling as sorry for you and I as I am just for the country as a whole for sort of losing more and more interest, in people who are going to tell them things they necessarily don't want to hear. And Yeah, to me that's frustrating. It's not just us. There are people out there who do what we do, and they go through these same challenges that we do, and it is what it is. But it's frustrating, and I think now even I think it's even more of an issue, surprisingly, in the second Trump term, because I think people, as Trump does things that are increasingly hard to defend. I mean, Bernie, you wrote a couple pieces lately. One was of the pardon power that's gotten out of control. You included obviously Clinton and Biden, but you pointed out that Trump is an abuser of it as well, and people don't like that. Trump fans don't want to hear that. They want to hear that well, this side did it, so it's okay that our side does it, even if it's really not proportionally the same, or even if it's you know, you can't really get mad at one side for doing it and then decide it's okay for your side to do it without sort of throwing away some principles. So I think people are surprisingly sort of more sensitive to it now because it's harder to defend, and they just don't want, they know on some level that what people like you are saying is correct, but it's really irritating to them because they don't have a defense to it. So I think that's part of the equation as well.
All this talk of it from people, all we want is honest journalism. All we want is the facts. You tell us what's going on, we'll make up our minds. And if it's opinion, all we want is honest opinion. It's all BS. It's all effing BS. And you know what? Everybody out there who says they want honest journalism but really wants bias, they want bias. They are the unindicted co-conspirators in all of this. The people, the audience wants bias. We have a rare audience, and I'm not blowing smoke at our people. I really like them, because I think they want honest journalism, but most people don't. And let's move on. I'm tired of talking about this. The second topic, which is an example of how people are tribal. Alex Padilla, California United States Senator, Alex Padilla. He goes into a Kristi Noem news conference in California, interrupts her speaking, is walking towards her in the podium. I mean, we live in violent political times, and here's a guy walking towards a secretary, Homeland Security secretary. Her security detail stops him and moves him in the opposite direction. He pushes back against them. And what does liberal media do? They show the part, and it's a legitimate thing to show, but they show the part about how the security detail took him to the ground and handcuffed him. And then they say, look at the overreaction. Never mind what we just saw. Never mind that here's a United States Senator interrupting comments made by a member of the cabinet, the Trump cabinet. Never mind that he's moving towards her, maybe in a threatening way. That's not what they care about, the liberal media. All they care about is what they see as the overreaction. Now, if it were the other way around, if Bret Baier lost his mind and said something at a news conference and went to a Joe Biden when he was president, cabinet member, and interrupted him or her, and was stopped by the security detail but kept pushing forward, you know what would happen? The conservative, the MAGA crowd would say, well, what did he do that was so wrong? He's just saying that Joe Biden is a bad president, and he's pointing that out. No, you know what the topic of this No BS Zone today is? Principles are freaking dead. They're dead. Nobody stands for anything. Everything is tribal. If you're a conservative, you root for the red team. If you're a liberal, you root for the blue team. Nobody stands for principle anymore.
No, and I agree. It's funny when you sent me an email suggested topics for this week. I didn't even I was off in the Utah desert for about a week, totally off the grid for politics. Something I very much recommend. People should vacation from all this crazy stuff. But no, I had to look up that video, and you're right. I mean, it's I've never been a fan of this sort of thing we see from time to time. I think Beto down in Texas did it with some Ted Cruz press conference a few years ago. We've seen people shout out during presidential addresses. It's almost always a partisan stunt, and I think a senator, someone like Padilla, if he actually wanted to ask questions of Kristi Noem, if that's really what he was interested in, I think he probably could have gotten an audience with her privately, not made a public spectacle. So yeah, I mean, this is really just, it's done just to create a moment, to create a media moment, and it did. And you're going to get the reliable spin from the partisan media whenever it happens.
There's something you wanted to talk about, which is the political violence we're witnessing in the country. Let me say a few words about it, then I want to throw it to you, John. Everybody agrees, seemingly, that we need to tone down the rhetoric because that can lead to political violence. That's another thing people don't mean, because they use political rhetoric, extreme political rhetoric, provocative political rhetoric to serve their own purposes. So if you call Donald Trump a Nazi long enough, if you compare him to Hitler long enough, don't be shocked when some idiot gets on a roof with a rifle and tries to assassinate him. Don't be shocked. There may not be a direct connection between the two, but if you call somebody Hitler long enough, somebody in a country of 330 million people is going to say, I don't like Hitler, I'll kill him. And that's on the one hand. And if you say the election was rigged long enough, the 2020 election was stolen, if you say that nonsense long enough, you're going to get January 6th. You're going to get thugs beating up cops on January 6th at the US Capitol. So everybody says tone down the political rhetoric. It leads to trouble, it leads to violence, but they don't want to tone it down because it suits their purpose.
No, I think that's true, and that's I wanted to sort of bring up this topic because of the latest political violence in Minnesota. There have been other examples, but that's what sort of put it, when it brought up the idea for this week. And I agree with what you're saying. The rhetoric is out of control. I think it does have an influence on sort of unstable people. So it's something we always sort of talk about, but people don't really want to change how they talk. With the situation in Minnesota, a Democratic lawmaker and her husband were assassinated. Another Democratic lawmaker and his spouse were also shot. The shooter is now in custody. And what I want to talk about is how we react to these things afterwards. And every time this happens, both sides, and it happened again with Minnesota, about 30 seconds after this is reported, both sides are online pointing fingers of blame at their ideological opponents.
Right.
A lot of times they just make things up. It doesn't matter. And Senator Mike Lee was particularly gross about this. He was out there with his little "A Nightmare on Wall Street" tweet. I don't know if you saw that, Bernie, but it's pretty sick. But it's just become another political weapon, political violence. Nobody wants to really take a step back and look at themselves. They just want to point fingers at the other side, again, often without having the facts of who this person was. And it's again, this is depressing because it's an area where, as Americans, we should be able to come together and not immediately politicize these types of things. Take a breath, let a day pass before more facts come out. But it's not what we do, unfortunately. It's just we see it as an opportunity to whack the other side on the head, even if the facts don't line up with that. I don't think the political right in this instance was very quick to frame this person as a hardcore left winger. He wasn't. It's stuff like that is just so, I think, corrosive to society.
There's a lot of talk in the culture about the supposed existential threat of climate change. I'll tell you what the immediate existential threat is: polarization in America. Everybody taking sides when something bad happens. Nobody wants to betray their own side because that would be like giving ammunition to the enemy. That's an existential threat. Americans turning against each other because we disagree with them. We disagree with the other side on some political issue. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. We take for granted, in a very perverse way, shootings in schools. There'll be another shooting in a school at some point. Well, political violence may be the same thing. Who's next? We know about Minneapolis because it just happened. You think it's not going to happen again? Given
It happened here in my state of Colorado just a few weeks ago in Boulder. Yeah, there was another instance there. But yeah, I think we're going to see more of it, unfortunately.
Couple of other topics we'll do quickly because I'm not in a good mood and it's not fair to expose our followers, the people, our audience, to my not being in a good mood. My men column. Democrats have a problem with men, especially young men. They lost a sizable number of them in the 2024 election, excuse me. And they're trying to win them back with a $20 million campaign. Here's an idea, Democrats, and you don't have to spend $20 million. Stop talking about toxic masculinity. Stop talking about mansplaining. Stop calling men sexist and racist. The Democratic National Committee has a list on its website of who we serve. That's what it's titled, Who We Serve. Everybody and his sister is on the list. Every ethnic group you can imagine is on the list. Women as an entire group are on the list. Men, nowhere to be seen. So you're trying to win men back, Democrats, right? And you don't put them on a list of who you serve. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, Bernie, and how the left has tried to sort of marginalize men, which has backfired politically. A real shocker there. The political right has obviously taken advantage of that, as well they should. Though I think their presentation of masculinity is kind of silly at times as well. But you brought up the term in your piece, and I think you just did it again now, mansplaining. It's weird to me because I thought that for some reason that phrase has always cracked me up, but I thought it was something that kind of jumped the shark a few years back, but it does seem to have made somewhat of a comeback. And there's a comedian, I forget who it is, who makes the joke that mansplaining has somehow been extended to cover any instance of man speaking. It's just another example of that marginalization. But as you pointed out, Democratic groups are spending big bucks to try and remedy their problem with men, which again is in itself pretty funny to me. I mean, it's like you said, they just have to stop treating men as if they're, this four-letter word that you described in your column. But they can do that for free. But I don't know if they need to spend a lot of money to focus on that. But hey, if they want to put the funds into it, go ahead.
You'd think they'd understand that, but they don't, because the progressive wing of the party thinks men are the enemy. I'm talking about straight white men are the enemy. And as long as they think that, these straight white men notice it. It's like, well, men have all the power. Tell me what kind of power a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant coal miner in West Virginia has. What kind of power does he have? What kind of power does a blue-collar guy who's living paycheck to paycheck? Because he's a man, he has power. It is so stupid. It is so unintelligent in terms of the political analysis, and they're spending $20 million to win them over. They could do it for free if they had an ounce of common sense. Let me move on to one more topic, which is a little nuanced. Nuance is a bad thing, so I'll be brief. The isolationist wing of the Republican Party, they don't want to spend any more money on the Ukraine war. I understand their position. I don't think Ukraine can win the war. I think every day Ukraine is turned into more and more rubble. I don't think they will ever win the war. So they say, why are we throwing money down that hole? We got to stop. That bothers me because I think Ukraine is the victim in all of this, which it obviously is. What bothers me is that these people don't seem to care if Russia wins. They don't seem to care if Russia takes over Ukraine. It's like, well, it's not in our interest. Who cares? Well, it is in your interest, you moron, because what happens after they take Ukraine? They're going to want to take back the other pieces of the Soviet Union that are there. They're going to want to take over Latvia and Lithuania and Poland and Hungary. You don't get that because you're narrow-minded, and you're narrow-minded on the Iran-Israel thing also. It's like, well, we don't want to support Israel because it's not in our interest. Well, nobody's asking you to, United States to put troops in the area. Nobody's asking that. And you don't want boots on the ground. I get it. But when you have no morality in the issue, when what you're essentially saying is, well, we don't care if Iran has a nuclear weapon and uses it to destroy Israel, that's not in our self-interest. What do we care? How does that affect America? It's the immorality, the lack of morals that bothers me about it. It's not the isolationism in and of itself. It's the lack of morality. It's the lack of concern that Ukraine will lose to Russia. It's the lack of concern that Israel could be blown up if Iran had a nuclear weapon. It's immoral, and that's what bothers me.
Yeah. Well, I'll say just a little bit on Ukraine, but I also wanted to get into the Israel stuff. I do think Ukraine, and I think this more and more. I think Ukraine actually has a better chance than I originally thought they did. You see them make these surprising attacks against Russia lately. It's Russia doesn't want to give up. I think at some point, though, I think they can be stopped. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Israel. So Israel, this is sort of playing out right now as we're recording this, but they've ratcheted up these attacks on Iran, these preemptive attacks against their nuclear program, and they're doing some serious damage to the nuclear program, which I think is a great thing for the world, including Iran's Middle Eastern neighbors who don't have much affection for Israel. I think a lot of them are secretly quite happy about what's happening right now. There were some early reports that President Trump wasn't necessarily on board with Israel's decision at first, but he does seem to be on board now in his rhetoric and some of the military movements we're seeing. And what we're seeing as a result is this long existing, to a larger degree, we're seeing this long existing split in MAGA world between the pseudo isolationist faction, which I would say includes people like Tulsi Gabbard, Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, even J.D. Vance, even though I think he's going to hold his tongue on all this is what's going on right now. And then you have the more traditional Republican, pro-Israel hawks like Marco Rubio, for example. But it's basically it's funny because Trump is sort of seeming to fall in line more with Rubio's vision on this. And it's for me, it's interesting to watch the isolationists, say, well, Trump's just being tricked by these neocons and these warmongers and supporting this. And Trump is actually, to my surprise, taking aim at some of them. He called out Tucker Carlson the other day as a wacko or something like that. He's belittled him.
Do you think Tucker Carlson cares if Israel is blown up by an Iranian nuclear bomb?
I haven't. Tucker Carlson is to me, he is a wacko. He's part of me thinks he's does. I mean, I don't think he believes a lot of what he's saying. I don't know. It's hard for me to tell if he went off the rails or if he's doing this all to get more people listening to him to say provocative things. It's always a little tough. What do you? I'm quite curious. What do you think, Bernie? Do you think he cares?
I don't want to say that. I don't want to conclude that people say things that they don't really believe. I think if they say it, I'm going to assume they really believe it. But I don't think Tucker Carlson or Steve Bannon, I think in the guise of America first, in only caring about American interest, I don't think they think Israel's existence or Ukraine's existence is in America's interest. And I think if they were around in the 1940s and knew that there were gas chambers annihilating, exterminating an entire population of people simply because of their religion, I think they'd say, how is this in the United States' interest to get involved? Again, it's the immorality of all of this that bothers me. And just one shot at Tucker Carlson. I'm tired of hearing how intelligent he is. I don't think he's smart at all. I think he's stupid. I think he's not because I disagree with him. I don't think his arguments are well thought out. But I don't talk. I'm tired of talking about him. I'm tired of talking about all of this. I know every time we sign off, I say, tell your friends about us. We need more people following, and it never works. So I'm not saying it this time, but I am saying that what does work, we don't do. What does work, we don't do. What does work is saying Donald Trump is a Nazi, a Hitler, or that he's a great American president, one or the other. We don't do that. And one of these days, we're not going to be here, and I'm going to have more time to do other things. So if you know people who might be interested, tell them. If you don't tell them. I don't care anymore. I'm checking out. But
Also,
I will say one other thing.
sure.
We always say we're interested in your opinions. I'm especially interested in your opinion this time because I'm in such a bad mood. I am interested in your take on today's No BS Zone.
Absolutely. I was just going to say that we always enjoy hearing the feedback from people. We want to hear what, paying subscribers. You obviously, those of you paid to listen to us and pay to read us, mainly Bernie. I always say us. My stuff's free, but yeah, we know you're different than a lot of the frustrations we are voicing here. So these aren't aimed at the bulk of our subscribers. There are people that come in here.
They're different in a very good way.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I was born without the BS gene. So I really mean that. It is a special audience, and I like them. I don't know any of them personally. I know one or two people personally, but I mean, I like the fact that they're with us, but they are a different audience. No question about
Right.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are people that, and we've talked about this before, Bernie, that come in here because they perhaps, saw you, read a column of yours somewhere where you were going after the left. Some people see it going on the right. They come in thinking that you're going to give them the steady diet of
Right.
attacking one side and praising the other one, and then they realize, oh wait, that's not what we're about, and then they bail. And like we said, that's frustrating. But yeah, most of our subscribers here, they get what we're doing. They appreciate what we're doing, and we love hearing from them. So for those of you listening to this, in addition to telling your friends about us, please let us know your thoughts.
Opinion journalists are entitled to state the obvious, are entitled to their opinions. But even opinion journalists have to be fair. You can't criticize Donald Trump and make believe Joe Biden didn't do the same thing. And you can't criticize Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or liberals in general and pretend conservatives didn't do the same thing. That's where we're either different or at least different enough to stand out. But we're standing out with a small group of people who like what we do. Most people like the other thing, and we're not going to be the other thing. I'd rather shut down than become somebody that panders to the audience. We're not going to do that. Okay, I'm done. Are you done?
I'm done.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.